Welcome, everyone, to the Highly Relevant Podcast. My name is Jack Rico, and this is episode 20 that you've just downloaded. It's also going to be a little bit of a lighter version of our usual podcast as we focus on filmmaker Gore Verbinski. He has a new movie called A Cure for Wellness starring Dane DeHaan and Jason Isaacs. If you like psychological thrillers, then you're going to want to listen to this episode. Filmmaker Gore Verbinski won an Academy Award for the cerebral and highbrow animated film Rango, one of my favorites, and has enjoyed tremendous success as the director of the Hollywood blockbuster franchise Pirates of the Caribbean. But it's his latest psychological thriller, A Cure for Wellness, that has many people remembering his earlier acclaimed remake of The Ring. Have a listen.
There is a sickness inside us, rising like the bile that leaves that bitter taste at the back of our throats. It's there in every one of you seated around the table. Only when we know what ails us can we hope to find the cure.
What do you make of that?
Clearly he's lost his mind.
Our thoughts exactly.
We'd like you to go to Switzerland and bring Mr. Pembroke back to us.
What we offer here is a process of purification away from the pressures of the modern world.
You plan to take Mr. Pembroke back with you?
Is that a problem?
Gore Verbinski, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Explain to us, what is Cure for Wellness about, and why did you need to make this psychological thriller?
Well, we were really just toying with this idea of taking the wellness center, the place of, tranquility and a place that is seemingly benign and really corrupting it. It seemed like it was ripe for turning it on its head, and that sort of led to, well, what if this was a spa in the Alps that had been there for a long time and was sort of had its own deep dark secrets, but is also looking down on modern man and offering a diagnosis.
There are some really interesting points that I see you trying to get across here. Perhaps the most salient one for me was this psychological undressing of the corporate America man.
Well, I think that's really, the setup. I mean, the film is very much a kind of contemporary Gothic, and I think, it certainly deals in the macabre, but also, I didn't want to have sort of when curtain closes, you're kind of leaving the film behind. Something has to resonate, and that is the sort of modern man aspect of it. And we're playing with this idea that diagnosis is a form of absolution. Right? You're not responsible because you're not well. You have a note from your doctor, sort of letting you off the hook. And working backwards from there, you kind of ask the question, well, who's vulnerable to that? And I think, we imagined a place where this oligarchs and heads of industry and our character, played by Dane DeHaan, Lockhart, who's a stockbroker, willing to do whatever it takes to succeed, that, they might be vulnerable to this diagnosis. And that's the sort of opiate, that's the kind of phase one, or the lotus eaters of this place, is that feeling that, there is something wrong with me, and I've kind of always known that deep down inside. There's a sense of denial. I've always imagined if you kept going further into the steam room, you might bump into Dick Cheney wrapped in a towel.
You wrote the story. Was there anything in particular in your own life experience that served as a motif for this film? Was there something you were unhappy with? Did you see something, or maybe perhaps a friend, or maybe the movie industry, that you just felt like you needed to sort of insert into this movie?
Jack, that's a good question. I mean, I suppose, we all have, any time you would, with any achievement, I suppose there's some sense of guilt. I certainly, when I make a movie, I'm away from my family for a very long periods of time. And I think that, a sort of cult of personality, a kind of This director Vollmer is a kind man. He's a man who sort of can put his hand on your knee and say, he's concerned. When was the last time you felt well, and are you sleeping through the night? And there's something that makes us vulnerable to that. I certainly remember being a kid and being called to the principal's office, and my defenses were up, and I knew I was right, and I was gonna defend my position, and the door closes, and he just asks, is everything okay at home? And you just start crying.
Right.
It's like you can't help yourself. There's that sense of that figure of authority. So, but again, that's just the setup. I mean, once you're in, we start to, we find out the history of this place and the sort of there's something very H.P. Lovecraft about the unknowable and the sort of madness that's going to occur in trying to know the unknown. And as Lockhart gets closer to the truth and the sort of darkness of this place, he starts to lose his grasp on reality.
The movie is very effective with its drama and its tension, but I feel like there's so many movies, so many psychological thrillers that are released every single year, and maybe one or two get it right. What is so hard about making a psychological thriller? At least one that is satisfying to the crowd.
I don't think our movie is sort of immediately reducible. There are certainly psychological elements to it. There's also something very macabre going on, and I think of the movie as kind of really two worlds. At the end of this film, Lockhart and Hannah sort of belong to neither world, and there's certainly a sense of, as he gets closer to this castle, this sort of sanitarium in the Alps, he's kind of leaving the waking state, and he's entering a sort of dream logic. I mean, his devices stop working, his cell phone stops, his watch stops. He's kind of out of bounds somehow. So you get to kind of you get to work with enigma and kind of allow the audience to connect things in the way they might do when they're in a dream, and that requires less exposition. You sense that things are connected somehow. So it's very fragile. I mean, you're spell casting.
I read an interview where you said that this movie isn't for everybody. So then exactly who is this movie for?
Well, don't bring your kids.
Okay. That's a definite. Yeah, absolutely.
Look, I think so often now we go to movies knowing so much about what's going to happen.
The trailer tells us, the commercials, the TV spots.
It's either something that's sort of immediately reducible and on the one hand, or we've been to the theme park, or we've played the video game, or we know the graphic novel or the toy, whatever it is. We know so much about the movies we're going to see, and I think really this is for the people who kind of remember what it was like to go to a movie theater and to not know anything about what's going to happen. I remember seeing a lot of movies that were inappropriate for my age, but I think I saw The Exorcist when I was too young.
Oh yeah, well I think every kid saw that and was immediately scarred. Put me in that category.
Devastating.
I did want to ask you about your stage at this career as a director. Are you making movies for the sole reason of making the crowd escape into a world that you want them to on a business level? The studio's telling you what they want. Or is your responsibility as a director at this point to kind of make more of a socially conscious film where there's messages and subliminal points that you're trying to make?
Wow, that's a profound question. I think it's really, for me, it's about trying to get to that boundary of you're not quite sure this is going to work, or certainly it's not supposed to. I mean, when everybody thought we were crazy to try to make a pirate movie, and then we were told, you don't know how to make an animated movie, and this is certainly the case of trying to, the data says don't make a movie like this. All of those things just make it more interesting. You sort of run at you run at the issue, and you want to be on that boundary of the unknown. I mean, probably the scariest thing for me was making the second and third Pirates, because one day when I realized the studio's not nervous anymore, they're saying, just keep doing that thing you're doing, and you're kind of horrified because
you're being pigeonholed to a certain extent.
Well, no, prior to that, there was nothing but fear, because it was unknown, right? It wasn't supposed to work. And that's where the joy is, right? These are opportunities to learn.
You can catch Gore Verbinski's Cure for Wellness in theaters this Friday. Gore, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Jack.